First Liberty National Bank.
Hello, this is John David.
And Keri.
And we're here to talk to you about our 2 cents.
Today, we're going to do a few more travel tips, kind of rolling over from the week before. But this time is going to talk about how to save money while traveling.
Exactly. So one of the biggest things that we want to really kind of harp on is that when you do your research into where you want to travel, it's so important that you spend the time to understand, is there an easier way for me to get there, whether you travel by plane, car, truck, or even boat. And I know, Keri, you were just telling me a story about how you really want to go to St. Martin down in the Caribbean, but flying all the way to Fort Lauderdale or Miami was cheaper than taking the cruise directly out of Galveston.
Correct. And I could be wrong, but I don't believe Galveston will take you all the way there.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's one of the hiccups. But Galveston, you can go to the Caymans, you can go to Jamaica, that type of thing. Of course, Mexico is a hot spot for Carnival cruises out of Galveston. But St. Martin's definitely a place that I want to go visit. And we love cruising because we like to be able to hit multiple islands, multiple tropical vacations in one turnaround. Leaving for a 7-day out of Galveston is the same price as flying to Florida and leaving for a 7-day out of Florida. Both travel, flight, and cruise equal what just the cruise would cost out of Galveston.
And I bet you that if you flew out on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, it'd be even cheaper to fly to Fort Lauderdale or Miami. That was one of the tips that they talked about on Monday's video. And I actually did some research on that, and it was 100% accurate. There really was a price slump in the middle of the week, but that's probably because there's a lack of demand in the middle of the week unless you're a business traveler.
Correct. And most of the time, planes have to go to certain locations regardless if there's passengers on it or not. They just have certain routines that they have to follow. And so if you can jump on some of those planes that aren't heavily traveled, but it's their destinational trips every day, like Southwest, they'll fly to Georgia from Houston every day to Atlanta, back and forth, and whether there's anybody on it or not. And so if you can get on that on a Tuesday, it's going to be a fairly cheap flight.
That's really some great information. One of the big travel opportunities that I have coming up, as speaking about your St. Martin trip, is that my wife and I are planning to go to Colorado. And it was outrageously expensive for me to try and travel on a weekend. And so we were looking at bank holidays that maybe I could take a little time off after or beforehand. And we really settled upon somewhere in the middle of November was kind of the best time. And unfortunately, I know for a lot of our listeners that taking a trip in the middle of November isn't ideal because Thanksgiving is right around the corner and you clearly want to spend your vacation time on Thanksgiving with your family. However, we want to go and spend this time up in Colorado and just enjoy the scenery, get away before all the skiers come in, enjoy nature, and we're planning to go to a hot spring. That is something that I've always wanted to do. I've never been to a natural hot spring, and I think that I'm really going to enjoy it.
I think you will enjoy it too. We visited some hot springs in Arkansas, and it was a really neat experience to kind of go in and have your little spa day and just relax. And the hot springs are so cool because when we were in Arkansas, it was like 40 degrees outside. And, I'm from Southeast Texas. 40 degrees is freezing. Like, I'm bundled up in a puffer jacket, and that's not okay. But getting in that natural hot spring was so neat because it was really kind of warm and inviting.
I really sympathize with you on the 40 degrees. I get cold when it's below 70 outside. Right now, I'm wearing a jacket inside. Is that in Hot Springs, Arkansas, or am I just making that up?
So there are hot springs in Hot Springs, Arkansas. We would stay on Lake Ouachita, which is a little ways outside of Hot Springs. In between there in Lake Ouachita and Hot Springs, there are several bathhouses, is what they like to call them.
Do they have little shacks nearby or cabins that you could stay in?
They had almost built up exactly like a spa. You would walk in and it was inviting, and then you would walk around the outside of the building, and then that would be where the hot springs would be. Well, JD, thank you so much for joining me today as we discuss some traveling tips.
Absolutely. It is just one of those things where we really all want to get out and travel, and I'm praying that this pandemic comes to an end soon so we can all do it as safely as possible.
I'm praying right there with you. And to all of our listeners, we thank you so much for tuning in today.
Please like, follow, share, and subscribe.
Have a great day.
First Liberty National Bank.